Welcome, everyone, to today's Explainer. I am incredibly pumped to have you here because today we're breaking down something truly powerful. We're going to look at the anatomy of a movement by deconstructing the actual leadership principles behind Climate Action Labs, or CAL for short. If you've ever found yourself wondering how raw grassroots passion actually translates into structured systemic change, well, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's dive right into this.
Here is our quick roadmap for today. We've got 1. The climate action moment. 2. Core principles of CAL. 3. Strategic power mapping. 4. Structured for action. And finally, 5. Growing sustainable leaders.
All right, let's kick things off with Section 1, the climate action moment. We are living in a decisive decade for the future of humanity and the planet. The source material hits the nail on the head here. It makes it crystal clear that climate change isn't just an environmental crisis, right? It's a governance, justice, economic, and cultural challenge. The whole shebang. Because of that, there's a massive, urgent need for young people, especially those in urban centers and universities, to totally shift focus. We can't just talk about adaptation and resilience anymore. We absolutely have to move toward active regeneration. That shift, that is the catalyst for everything we're about to explore today.
And this really captures exactly how we get there. Notice how there's no top-down, stuffy corporate boardroom here. Instead, you've got this engaged group sitting in a circle, mapping out ideas together on a wall. This is bottom-up, collaborative leadership in action. It perfectly illustrates CAL's foundational solution. We have to shift away from isolated individual actions and move toward collaborative, on-the-ground innovation. This is literally where the magic happens.
Moving right along to Section 2, Core Principles of CAL.
So, let's talk about the 5 core values that make up the absolute identity of every single CAL chapter. We're talking respect, empowerment, inclusion, action, and regeneration. Now look, these aren't just fluffy buzzwords to slap on a break room poster. The manual strictly dictates that every single chapter must adopt and truly embody these 5 pillars. They act as a daily compass for how community members interact with each other and with the broader world.
But how do those abstract values translate into reality? Well, CAL culture heavily emphasizes experimentation, humility, collaboration, and adaptive leadership. It basically celebrates learning by doing and systems thinking. What that means on the ground is that failure isn't punished, not if it leads to learning. It means local chapters are constantly adapting to the messy realities of their specific environments, treating every single campaign as a real-time experiment to gather data and just get better.
Up next is Section 3, Strategic Power Mapping.
Okay, here's the big question for you. How do you actually move decision makers? It's one thing to have a fantastic idea for renewable energy policy, but how in the world do you get a mayor or a stubborn university board to actually sign off on it? Well, effective strategy in CAL means using the resources you have to amass the power you need. And to do that, you have to understand exactly where power lies in your community. It's kind of like a giant puzzle.
This brings us to the tactical genius of the organizing manual, a visual tool called a power map. It's essentially a simple graph. Step 1 is mapping the vertical axis, which measures the level of influence from high at the top to low at the bottom. Step 2 is mapping the horizontal axis, which measures the level of support. Now pay close attention to this scale. A 1 means they are fully with us, and a 10 means they are completely against us.
Let's put on our strategist hats for a second and dive into some real data. This is an example from the text involving a hypothetical Mayor X, who we desperately need to persuade on a 100% renewable energy transition. Mayor X has massive influence, a 10, but is sitting at a 6 on support, so they're slightly opposed. The local utility and Chamber of Commerce have high influence, but are even more opposed, sitting at 8 and 7 for support. But look at those bottom 2 rows. The University Council is at a 2 for support, and the coastal residents are at a 1, meaning they are fully on our side. The strategy here isn't to just, well, actually scratch that. It's definitely not to just stand outside and yell at the mayor. The smart play is to mobilize the university and the coastal residents to apply joint, targeted pressure on Mayor X, while simultaneously engaging the chamber on the economic benefits. It takes the pure emotion out of advocacy and replaces it with cold, effective strategy.
All right, rolling into Section 4, Structured for Action. CAL calls this framework the dual chapter system. You see, Climate Action Labs operate on the principle that organized, empowered local teams achieve wildly better results than isolated individuals. But they have to balance 2 very different, sometimes conflicting needs: institutional legitimacy and grassroots agility. Let's break down exactly how this structure manages to pull off both.
The whole system relies on two distinct but totally connected halves. On one side, we have the embedded chapter. This lives inside the official hierarchy of, say, a university or a city hall. It gives the movement vital policy access, official strategy alignment, and even potential budgets. But as we all know, bureaucracies are famously slow. So, on the flip side, we have the community chapter. This operates outside the bureaucracy. It focuses entirely on rapid mobilization, mass participation, and new power principles, meaning decentralized, peer-driven influence. The real beauty here is the synergy. The embedded chapter provides the facilities and the data, while the community chapter brings the passionate volunteers and public engagement. They share resources, they share leadership, and they ensure they are always complementary rather than competitive.
Another absolute structural masterpiece here is co-listing. Co-listing literally breaks down traditional academic silos by allowing multiple universities to officially recognize and deliver the exact same climate-focused course simultaneously. Students across different campuses or even totally different cities get to share instructors and materials. They receive credit from their home institution, all while collaborating on shared real-world campaigns. It's a real game changer because it turns isolated, quiet classrooms into a massive, multi-institutional talent pipeline for climate action.
Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, Growing Sustainable Leaders.
Have a look at this. This is the Snowflake leadership model. Notice how it starts with these disconnected dots and slowly forms a beautiful, interconnected snowflake pattern. It's a perfect visual metaphor for distributed leadership. In Cal, leadership isn't some rigid corporate pyramid with one boss at the top. It's a dynamic, networked snowflake where new leaders are continually emerging and taking ownership of their own specific nodes.
The organizing manual tracks this evolution across 5 distinct phases. In Phase 1, you basically just have scattered volunteers with good intentions. By Phase 2, they're working together, but loosely. In Phase 3, you get certification and formal leads finally begin to emerge. Phase 4 is established, where core roles are actively filled by trained leaders. But the ultimate goal is Phase 5, sustainable. This is where you have truly distributed teams taking full ownership of projects. By dividing tasks across this entire snowflake structure, no single person bears the full weight of the movement. And honestly, that is the #1 defense against activist burnout. So once all those roles are filled, chapter leadership must immediately focus on building a pipeline of prospective leaders. Because here is the secret. True sustainable leadership in Cal is not about hoarding power or desperately holding on to your title. It's about constantly mentoring the next wave of local leaders. It's about coaching your team on how to identify, test, and train new people so that the chapter doesn't just survive, but remains resilient and thriving over time. Which leaves us with one final provocative question for you to ponder today. How will you apply these adaptive leadership principles in your own bioregion? We've unpacked the values, we've mapped out the power dynamics, and we've explored the incredible dual-chapter snowflake structure. The blueprint for bottom-up, collaborative climate action is literally right here in front of us. Now it's completely up to you to take this structured knowledge and turn it into real-world action in your community. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and keep learning.